What does evil look like? Close your eyes and picture it. Do you see a shadowy figure lurking in a dark alley? A monstrous face contorted with rage. For generations, we comforted ourselves with the idea that monsters were easy to spot, that they were aberrations, grotesque figures on the fringes of society. We believed we would know them when we saw them. But in the 1970s, a new kind of monster walked among us. He didn't lurk in the shadows. He strode confidently in the bright light of day. He was handsome, intelligent, and overflowing with a charm that could disarm even the most cautious. He was a law student, a political volunteer, a crisis hotline counselor. He was the kind of man you'd be happy for your daughter to bring home. And that is the most terrifying part of this story. Today, we delve into the abyss. We are not just recounting a series of crimes. We are dissecting a paradox. We will explore the life and mind of a man who shattered America's innocence and forced us to confront a horrifying truth, that the most depraved evil can wear the most handsome and convincing of masks. This is the story of Theodore Robert Bundy, the man who became the very definition of the enemy within. Prepare to question every thought you knew about the face of evil.
Welcome to the Scary Stories channel with Mr. Merc.
Our story begins not with a crime, but with a carefully constructed image. Born Theodore Robert Cowell in 1946, Bundy's early life was shrouded in secrets. He was raised believing his mother was his older sister, and his grandparents or his parents a lie designed to hide the shame of his illegitimate birth. From the very beginning, his life was built on a foundation of deception. As a young man, he was awkward, shy, and desperate for acceptance. But within this quiet boy, a dark ambition was taking root. He wasn't content to be average. He began to meticulously craft a new persona, the confident, successful, all-American man. He changed his last name to Bundy, enrolled in university, and excelled in psychology. He involved himself in Republican politics, earning praise for his intelligence and dedication. To the outside world, Ted Bundy was a rising star. He was handsome, articulate, and possessed a smile that seemed to radiate sincerity. But behind the smile, something else was growing. A cold, predatory emptiness. He would later describe it as an entity, a dark force that lived inside him, feeding on violent fantasies that grew more powerful and demanding each year. While he was shaking hands with politicians and counseling people in crisis, this entity was hunting. In the private theater of his mind, he was already a killer. And in 1974, the curtain finally rose on his real-life reign of terror. The Pacific Northwest was a region of stunning natural beauty and trusting communities. In the early months of 1974, that trust began to erode, replaced by a creeping, inexplicable fear. Young women, mostly bright and beautiful college students, started to vanish. One by one, they disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only questions and terrified families. Linda Ann Healy, a promising University of Washington student, vanished from her basement bedroom. Donna Gail Manson, a student at Evergreen State College, walked away from her dorm and was never seen alive again. The disappearances were maddeningly similar, yet bafflingly random. The only thread connecting them was a phantom. Witnesses began to report seeing a handsome young man, often with his arm in a sling or on crutches, struggling near a tan Volkswagen Beetle. He would ask for help to carry books, to load something into his car. He was polite, non-threatening, a picture of vulnerability. How could anyone refuse? Jorgan Hawkins, an 18-year-old sorority sister, was last seen in a brightly lit alley behind her sorority house, talking to a man on crutches. She, too, vanished into the night. This was Bundy's genius, the cornerstone of his terrifying method. He didn't use brute force, not at first. He weaponized empathy. He inverted the predator-prey dynamic, presenting himself as the one in need. He was a chameleon, transforming his good looks and charm into the perfect camouflage for the monster that lay beneath. While the police searched for a violent deviant, Bundy was hiding in plain sight, his friendly wave and confident smile the ultimate misdirection. As the body count in Washington and Oregon grew, so did Bundy's audacity. In the fall of 1974, he moved to Salt Lake City to attend law school at the University of Utah. The disappearances didn't stop. They simply followed him. The pattern repeated itself with chilling precision. Young women vanished from towns across Utah, Colorado, and Idaho. The hunter had expanded his territory, but in this new hunting ground, the chameleon made a mistake. On November 8, 1974, a young woman named Carol Derange was approached by a man in a mall who identified himself as a police officer. He told her someone had tried to break into her car and she needed to come with him to the station. He was convincing, but something felt wrong. When he tried to handcuff her in his car, a primal fear took over. She fought back with everything she had, managed to unlock the door, and threw herself from the moving vehicle, screaming for her life. Carol Derange had seen the monster's face, and, miraculously, her testimony provided police with their first solid description of the killer. Months later, in a routine traffic stop, a patrol officer pulled over a familiar tan Volkswagen Beetle. The driver was calm, charming, and a law student, Ted Bundy. But a search of his car revealed a disturbing collection of items: a crowbar, an ice pick, rope, and handcuffs. The tools of his trade, the so-called kill kit. The net was closing, but the world wasn't ready to believe it. When Bundy was arrested, his friends, colleagues, and former girlfriend were incredulous. Not Ted. He was brilliant, kind, gentle. It had to be a mistake. This disbelief was Bundy's greatest ally. Even as the evidence mounted, his carefully crafted persona held strong, a shield of normalcy that seemed impenetrable. He was convicted of the Derange kidnapping and sentenced to prison in Utah. But investigators from multiple states knew this was only the tip of the iceberg. They were building a case to link him to a string of brutal murders in Colorado. In 1977, Bundy was extradited to Aspen to stand trial for the murder of Corinne Campbell. He was facing the death penalty, and he knew it. But Ted Bundy had no intention of letting a prison cell be the end of his story. He was smarter than all of them, and he was about to prove it. Acting as his own attorney gave him a unique privilege: access to the courthouse law library, a room without bars on the windows. During a recess in his trial, he saw his chance. He asked the guard to leave, leaped from a second-story window, and vanished into the mountains. For 6 days, he was a fugitive, a ghost in the wilderness, before being recaptured, hungry and cold. It was a bold, embarrassing failure for law enforcement. But it was just a rehearsal. Back in a county jail in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, Bundy began plotting his second, far more elaborate escape. Over months, he starved himself, losing over 30 pounds. Night after night, he used a smuggled hacksaw blade to slowly cut a 1-foot square hole in the ceiling of his cell. He concealed his work with cardboard and paint. On the night of December 30, 1977, with most of the guards off for the holidays, he put his plan into motion. He climbed through the hole, crawled through the ceiling, into an empty jailer's apartment, changed into stolen clothes, and simply walked out the front door into the snowy night. By the time his absence was discovered the next morning, Ted Bundy was long gone, on a cross-country journey to his final and most horrific hunting ground, Florida. Arriving in Tallahassee, a free man driven by his darkest compulsions, Bundy was a predator uncaged. The entity was now in complete control. In the pre-dawn hours of January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. What he did in the next 15 minutes was an explosion of pure, unrestrained savagery. He moved from room to room, bludgeoning and strangling 4 young women in their sleep, killing 2 of them, Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. The attack was frenzied, brutal, and left a scene of unimaginable horror. He then fled, breaking into a nearby apartment and attacking another student who survived. The chameleon was gone. In his place was a rabid animal, killing now not with cunning and charm, but with pure, violent rage. Less than a month later, his final act of evil played out. He abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from her junior high school in Lake City. She was his youngest victim, a final, depraved testament to his absolute lack of humanity. Her body was found weeks later in an abandoned pigsty. But the killing spree was over. A few days after Kimberly's murder, Bundy was pulled over by a police officer in Pensacola. He was driving a stolen car. This time, there would be no escape. The final capture of Ted Bundy wasn't dramatic. It was mundane, a fittingly pathetic end to a reign of terror. The trial that followed was a spectacle unlike any America had ever seen. It was the first nationally televised murder trial, and Bundy, the narcissistic showman, took center stage. He fired his lawyers and chose to represent himself, hoping his charm and intelligence would sway the jury. But the camera saw through the mask. The world watched, mesmerized and horrified, as this handsome, well-spoken man cross-examined the police officers and forensic experts who were sealing his fate. They saw the arrogance, the coldness in his eyes. The prosecution's case was overwhelming, but the nail in his coffin came from Bundy himself. On the mangled body of Lisa Levy, he had left a savage, deep bite mark. Forensic odontologists were able to create a perfect match to Bundy's crooked teeth. In a dramatic courtroom moment, the jury saw the undeniable proof. The monster had left his signature. He was found guilty and sentenced to death 3 times over. For a decade, he sat on death row, a subject of endless fascination and study. He played games with investigators, offering vague confessions in exchange for favors, always maintaining a sense of control. In his final days, just before his execution, He finally began to talk, confessing to more than 30 murders, though the true number will never be known. He blamed his actions on pornography and a society that had failed him. One last, desperate act of manipulation from a man who never accepted responsibility for the monster he had become. On January 24, 1989, Theodore Robert Bundy was executed in the electric chair. Outside the prison, crowds cheered, celebrating the death of a demon. The story of Ted Bundy did not end with his death. His legacy is etched into the very fabric of our society. He was the catalyst for change, forcing law enforcement to develop new methods of tracking killers who cross state lines. The FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, criminal profiling, the very term serial killer, all entered the public consciousness in the wake of his crimes. But his most profound legacy is a psychological one. Bundy was a walking, talking embodiment of the banality of evil. He taught us the terrifying lesson that monsters don't always look like monsters. They can be our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends. They can have a winning smile and a brilliant mind. He stripped away our comforting illusions and left us with a chilling, unanswered question that lingers to this day. If a man like Ted Bundy can exist, who can you ever truly trust? He proved that the darkest abyss may not be in some far-off, shadowy place, but right behind a pair of charming, intelligent eyes.